Nick Mazone here, back again for another weekend. Another week. Looking forward to the weekend of a bunch of different sports, actually. But today we will be doing some NCAA football. Looking forward to the weekend, seeing where I find value on the picks that I see. Last week we went 4-2 in picks. We hit on Cincinnati -6.5, BYU -29. I know that the line got bet all the way up to 31, and I believe that was the final line. But when we gave it out here on the show, it was at 29, and just barely covered because it was a push on the final line. But we hit that here. Michigan State +25. Obviously, they won straight up. If anybody had that money line, congrats. That's a huge hit. And then finally, we hit on Virginia Tech -3, while we lost on Kansas State +115 and LSU -3. Obviously, both of those we missed pretty big on. And I'm kind of mad at myself for the Kansas State one, because I literally said on the show last week that every number pointed towards West Virginia, and I still went with Kansas State. So that's on me. That's what I get for thinking I'm smarter than all the numbers and everything like that. So that's on me. But 4-2 in total, plus 1.64 units across all the bets. And hopefully we can build on that today. And that will be, we're going to try to do that with starting by Miami -10 versus NC State. So people that watch this show will know that I've went with NC State a couple of times earlier in the year. And I believe we've hit on them all, if I'm not mistaken. But I just can't go with them here. The Wolfpack getting outscored on average by 3 points a game. Meanwhile, Miami's average game is winning by 10 points. So it's a huge point gap there between the two teams. Miami gains 20 yards more than NC State and allows 50 yards less per game. Miami runs the ball better. They allow less yards on the ground and through the air. Obviously they're a better team. I don't think NC State has any shot at winning this game. Obviously it's going to come down to just if they can keep it close, but I'm not so sold on it. I'm kind of on Miami having a big game. I think they can torch the defense. I think De'Aaron King has been very good since transferring to Miami. I think he makes them a legit team in the ACC, and I'm kind of going all in on him. I don't know, man. I've been pretty spot on with NC State games this year, but I just really like Miami in this one. I am a little worried about a potential backdoor, but, I mean, that's going to be the case with any bet that you ever have. But I don't know. I think Miami can win this one easy by 17, 21, somewhere in that range. NC State had some issues with some quarterback play, getting injured and stuff like that. So they've been a revolving door at quarterback. And I don't know. I like Miami to cover 10 here. That'll be my first pick of the day. And we can move into number 2, which is BYU -2.5 versus Boise State. I know we were just talking about them a little bit. I don't know. I really like him here. I was surprised to see him at only a 2.5 point favorite, considering they are undefeated and making a push towards the playoff potentially. I don't know, but we get them at a way better line here rather than making them cover 29, 31, whatever. Only got to win by a field goal, and I think it's very possible. BYU really has just been so much better than every single team that they've played this year. I talked about it last week. I'll do it again. Their wins this year are by 52 points, 41 points, 31. One close game had a 7-point win, then 17-point win, and a 38-point win. And now last week, they won by 31. And now we only get them at -2.5. So I think it's definitely very possible. Sure, this is the biggest test that they've had so far, but I'm really not too sold on Boise State. And I kind of really am sold on Zach Wilson at this point. I think he's up there with the best of them, having the best seasons. He's in the Heisman conversation. Not saying he's going to win it by any means, but he's probably got to be in the lower end of that top 5 when you're talking about who is in the Heisman race right now. But another thing, BYU does run the ball very well. 190 rushing yards per game there. So they're not just one-dimensional. They don't only rely on Zach Wilson. they can move the ball in a bunch of different ways. In terms of team stats, BYU puts up 527 yards per game, 455 for Boise State. Defensively, 281 yards per game for BYU and 343 yards from Boise State. The one thing about Boise State is you look at their numbers and they are allowing just 80 passing yards per game, but you got to take in the whole picture, which is they've only played 2 games and one of them was against Air Force, who doesn't throw the ball. So you got that. But I don't know. I just think BYU matches up pretty well. Boise won't see another guy like Zach Wilson this year. It's an early test for them. Meanwhile, BYU is kind of getting into the full swing of things. They've had a handful of games. Boise State's still trying to figure it out. It's only their 3rd game, and they're getting a huge step up in competition. I just don't see them holding back Zach Wilson and this BYU offense. So honestly, I'm not really concerned at all about 2.5. I think it's very well could be a very lopsided game. So I think BYU minus 2.5 should be relatively easy. But that always seems to be the ones that you lose. I don't know. Doesn't really make too much sense to me. I think BYU should be a bigger favorite. They've only had one game be by one possession this year. And everything else has been at least 3 possessions, and usually it's 4 or 5, 6 in that area. So I'm going with BYU minus 2.5. It honestly seems a little too good to be true, which is why I'm a little concerned about it. But I don't like to overthink things, so that's what I'm going with. And then we can go to another Power 5 team here, or a Group of 5 team, rather. Excuse me. I'm going with Liberty to cover 14.5 points versus Virginia Tech. I don't know, man. I'm not sold on VTech this year. They're very hit or miss. They started off their season beating NC State. Then they barely get by Duke. They lose to UNC. They beat Boston College pretty easily, and then probably their best game of the year. Then they lose to Wake Forest, and then they barely get past Louisville last week. And Louisville's not a good football team. So I don't know. Liberty, on the other side, they started off kind of slow. They barely got by Western Kentucky and FIU. But since then, they've gone on to dominate pretty much everyone they've played. That includes UL Monroe, Syracuse, Southern Miss, and all of those are by at least 3 scores, which I think is a good direction to look at. So I don't know. I think Liberty's kind of getting slanted on the line a little bit. They've already played a Power 5 team in Syracuse, and they beat them by 17, and now they're more than 2-score underdogs. I don't know. And also, you got to look at Virginia Tech. They definitely have some quarterback issues. They had Braxton Burmeister. They switched it to Hooker. No one really knows what's going on in that. But also, you got to take into account the fact that they pretty much only run the ball. I mean, that goes back to the quarterback issues. That's why they do it. But I think they rely a little bit too much on the ground game. They can't get back into they can't get back into games if they're down late. I don't know. I'm really not in on Virginia Tech. I don't think they're that good. And I know Liberty plays worse competition, but they are undefeated. They allow over 150 yards less per game while gaining the same amount of yards as Virginia Tech. I don't know, man. But another reason why I like this game, and maybe the one that pushes me in Liberty's direction the most, is because of the way that I think the game is going to play out. Virginia Tech, like I said, they run the ball a lot. They actually go for 290 yards per game on the ground. Liberty does a great job running the ball themselves, 255 ground yards per game. So I think both these guys are going to be running the ball a lot. I think it's going to limit possessions, and I think it should keep the game close. And I don't know. I just don't think Liberty loses by more than 2 scores here. I see a hard time. I have a hard time seeing that happen, especially with going to be so much running, so much clock getting run off. There's not going to be a lot of opportunity for a blowout here. So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, they've already beaten a Power 5 team by 17 points. They're undefeated. I just don't think there's a reason for them to be a 14.5-point underdog, especially like a team like Virginia Tech that can't figure out their own quarterback situation. So going with Liberty, going with the Flames, plus 14.5. And got two more picks here and then a handful of leans. And this one is the Georgia Bulldogs minus 3.5 versus Florida this week. Might be game of the week. I'm not sure. I know they're both ranked. Yeah, I mean, I'm all in on Georgia. I'm willing to say that I think that Georgia has the best defensive unit in the entire country. They allow just 16 points per game. Their front seven is elite. They allow 80 rushing yards per game. They've already played some decent teams: Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, and Kentucky. Obviously, that Alabama game inflates it a little bit. But even they held Alabama pretty much in check for a full half there before letting that game slip away. But yeah, I'm all in on the Georgia defense. I know their offense has had some issues, but I think this is going to be a good bounce back spot for Stetson Bennett. Florida allows 433 yards per game, 300 of those through the air. And like I said, I know Stetson Bennett's been struggling, but I think this is going to be a good game for him to maybe get some momentum. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like it, Matt. The style matchup here. Definitely at times Florida has struggled to get the running game going. And obviously I don't see it happening here against the Georgia front seven. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on both Kyle Trask and Stetson Bennett. But when you break it down, Bennett has the defense to help bail him out more so than Trask does. So I don't know. I'm kind of banking big on the Georgia defense. I think minus 3.5 is a very good line. I get it why it's at this place. If it ever gets down to minus 3 and you see it, jump on that right away. I know the hook doesn't seem like much, but obviously it can make some big impacts on games. So I don't know. I do think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. I'm not totally sure what the over-under is, but I would definitely look into that. If you think it's too high, definitely go with the under. Because, I mean, this Georgia team is – I think it's probably one of the 4 best teams in the country. Florida, I'm really not too big on. So I'm going with Georgia minus 3.5, banking on the defense, and hopefully Stetson Bennett can pick apart this Florida D that's allowing 300 passing yards per game to get enough points to help cover this relatively easily. And with that said, we can go into the final pick before just a handful of leans, and it's Oregon State versus Washington State. It is the first Pac-12 game I will be picking here. And actually the only one for the weekend. There are a couple of others that I looked at but didn't feel that confident in. But Oregon State -1 versus Washington State. Obviously, both of these guys, first games of the season. There's not too much to go off of. But really my reasoning why I like Oregon State here is because there's too many questions about Washington State and its offense. Obviously, new head coach. Leach is down at Mississippi State. They're bringing over the Hawaii coach, I believe is where he came from. So we did have Cole McDonald. They threw the ball a lot there, but I think what he's going to try to do is actually establish some sort of run game, which will be the first time Washington State's had that in a long time. So I think they're actually going to be running the ball, not just strictly air raid. But we don't know how it's going to work out. The players on this Washington State team were scouted for a different system. Now they have a new quarterback too. I just think there's so much value on basically a -110 money line for Oregon State going up against a team. First game of the year, everything being pretty much entirely brand new. So I don't know. I mean, does Washington State have more talent on the roster? Probably. But at least Oregon State has some continuity around the facility. I don't know. This is basically me just thinking there's too many questions about Washington State and how they're going to look game one. Oregon State -1. That's my first Pac-12 pick of the year. Hopefully it's a good one. And now I can give you guys a couple of leans before getting off here. And Ohio State -38 versus Rutgers. I know I must seem like a hypocrite. I say that I don't like laying big lines, and it seems like every week I've had one. Oh, actually, that reminds me. I forgot to say this earlier. Last week, I gave out Clemson minus 31, I believe it was. But that was before the Trevor Lawrence news. I'm hoping you guys give me a pass there. Obviously, when Trevor Lawrence is out, I don't like that line nearly as much. So I took that off. I hope that's all right. I forgot to mention that. But yeah, so I'm going with Ohio State minus 38 versus Rutgers. I don't know. I think Ohio State's just a little bit built different than the rest of the Big Ten. Don't think they should have a problem with that. And it's Rutgers. I know they're a little bit better this year than in the past, but it's still Rutgers. Kind of the joke of the Big Ten. So going with Ohio State minus 38. Also going with Army minus 6 versus Air Force. I don't know. I like Army. I think they're the better team. Definitely think they can win by a touchdown. And then finally, Virginia minus 2.5 versus Louisville. Obviously, Louisville got a win last week. I think it's recency bias. Don't think they should be only 2.5 point underdogs. Think it should be a little bit more. So I'm going with Virginia minus 2.5. And that seems like it'll wrap up all my picks. So I will be back on Thursday in 2 days to do the NFL this weekend, and then I'll be on Friday for some UFC preview. Hopefully I'll see you guys then. If you're only interested in the NCAA picks, I'll be back at this time next week, so you can catch me then. And good luck on everybody's picks, and I'll see you guys soon.